In today's video, we are going to see which is going to be the best airflow for the Bitfenix Phenom. I'm not into extreme cooling or anything like, the like of Linux Tech Tips and their sub-zero configuration. Although I was able with my system to reach temperatures under load in the range of the 50 degrees Celsius, which I think it's a pretty honest result. So how did I achieve this, and which is the best way to cool off your components, which is actually very important to also prolong the lifespan of your precious GPU, CPU, and motherboard. So initially, I went for a very straightforward airflow in the Bitfenix using the very big Cooler Master 200mm mega flow, which is also very handy for provide a little bit of nice lighting effect with its blue LED. I was very happy of how cool it was looking inside the Bitfenix, and but how effective is actually going to be. I mean, this thing is huge, is as big as my face. So is this the best choice? Many people like big fans like this because they're spinning at a very low RPM, and yet they're moving a lot of air, right? So usually they are pretty silent. Although I must say that this particular model of Cooler Master is not that particularly silent. So let's see which type of fans I have available. I didn't went so crazy. The only fan that I actually bought was the Cooler Master, and the rest of the fans I have in the case were the 120mm fans that are provided with the case. So how many fans I actually have available? So I have a 92mm fan that is coming with the cooler of the CPU. And then I had, as I mentioned, the 200mm Cooler Master fan, and then the 220mm Bitfenix fan. So first of all, initially, what I didn't like too much of this case is how to actually mount hard drives. I originally went for using the bracket, which is good from an airflow perspective because it's keeping the hard drives on the side of the case, but it was going to be very annoying every time I was opening the case and needed to change something. I had this bracket with the hard drive in front of the motherboard and the GPU and the CPU, and every time I had to remove the bracket with the hard drive and fill it in with a lot of cables. So I actually tested the airflow by removing the bracket, and I mounted the adapter for the 3.5mm optical bay. So this is the configuration I had. So I had the hard drive on the top, and that means that when I put the two fans at the top of the case, actually there's going to be a lot of turbulence of air blowing into the hard drive on top of the hard drive, so not ideal in that case. And then there is the CPU with a massive T3 Evo Cooler Master cooler. I mean, it's not that massive, but for this kind of case, it's taking a lot of space. I'm going to test 10 different type of fan configurations, and basically the main positions I can put the fan on are the 120 on the top of the case, so it can be on the front top, on the bottom top, and then we have the 120mm on the back of the case, and then we have the 92mm running on the CPU cooler, and the 200mm at the base of the fan. At the base of the case. That's the only spot where you can put a 200mm fan in the Bitfenix. This is actually, the Bitfenix case is actually based on the Prodigy case, so you actually have screws, inserts for the front of the case. However, you cannot really use that, and that is just the intake for the PSU, for the power adapter. So let's see the 10 configuration. Well, first of all, I went with no fan at all, and we more likely are going to see that that is the worst case scenario, right? So even though the T3 Evo cooler with my not overclock i5 is able to basically cool the CPU fanless, which is great, However, the 92mm fan coming with a cooler is not that noisy, so it's not really worth it to not have it run. But just for the sake of seeing what happened temperature-wise, I have one configuration with no fan. Then we have one configuration with only the 92mm fan blowing through the cooler. Then we have the 92mm fan plus the 200mm fan. So we have basically the fan on the cooler is moving air out from the cooler, and then it should be sucked up immediately by the 200mm fan at the bottom, which is exhausting from the bottom of the case. Then I tried only with the 200mm. As you can see, the CPU cooler is pretty close to the actual 200mm fan, so still the actual airflow that is pulled down from the 200mm fan is actually driving air through the cooler. And then the configuration I was going for most of the time before I started to actually test the airflow, I understand that probably was not the best solution, even though it seems to be the most straightforward, was to have the 220mm fans at the top, basically as an intake, and having a 200mm at the bottom. So this very straightforward flow from top to bottom of the case, with the 92mm fan basically just blowing air through the cooler itself. Then the sixth configuration that I come up with is to basically see what happened if I just remove the 200mm fan, because by removing the 200mm fan I could actually put the hard drives at the bottom of the case, which is actually a much cleaner configuration, and I also put the I/O panel on the left side of the Bitfenix upside down, because that also makes much more cleaner the situation when I was opening the case to change and modify stuff. So putting the hard drive on the bottom is something that I really like on the Bitfenix, but that of course is at the expense of the 200mm fan. So we're going to see if it's worth it and how much of a difference make not having a 200mm fan in the case. And then we have the 120mm at the front, on the top front, which is blowing directly over the hard drive. And then we have a very straightforward configuration at the back, where basically we have the 92mm fan blowing through the cooler and the 120mm as an exhaust on the back of the case. This is a very straightforward configuration, and that is where originally the fan of the Bitfenix case is installed when you just buy the case. And then I went with trying to see what happens if I don't have any fan at the top and I only exhaust in this very simple scenario. So the 8 configuration is with the 92mm and the 120mm at the back. The 9 configuration is what happened with having only one 20mm fan at the back as an exhaust. That is the most probably common configuration you can find in most of the cases. And the last configuration that proved to be the most successful, spoiler alert, is the one with the 120mm on the top back of the case, which is blowing directly over the GPU, right? And then the other 120mm fan at the back of the case exhausting, right? Together with the 92mm pushing through the CPU cooler. Now, let's review the actual performances. I come up with a calculation taking in consideration the lowest temperature, the higher temperature, and I actually weighted negatively if there is too much excursion, so if there is too much difference between the lower temperature reached and the highest temperature is going to impact negatively the score that I'm giving compared to the no fan configuration, right? So assuming and actually having proved that the no fans obviously is the worst configuration possible, let's go through a different type of configuration and see which are the ones that are making us gaining more. So with the 92mm, the GPU is interestingly performing better by a 3% point from a thermal point of view because of the little airflow created by the fan underneath the GPU card. And the CPU, obviously, massive improvement with 66%. Then if we move to the configuration where we are adding as well the 200mm fan, we see that it's impacting immediately very positively the GPU with an 18% better performance from a thermal point of view, and the CPU is only 35% better compared to the no fans configuration. And this is because of the thermal excursion is going from a very low temperature, right, but almost extremely too low to a very high one. So the although the temperatures are close to the 92mm configuration, the actual excursion in the temperature is much higher. That proves the fact that the actual airflow in the case may be not the most consistent. So if we move to the 200mm only configuration, the GPU is improving a lot, right? With 27% better performance. And you see how by removing the 92mm, we create less turbulence and there is a more clear airflow for the GPU, which makes it perform 27% better. Then if we have the 200mm at the bottom with the 220mm at the top and 92mm, interestingly, the motherboard is performing worse than without fan, right? And this shows again how turbulence is really impacting a lot the performance of the cooling. And we are having, however, a good performance on the GPU with 31% and a very good performance on the CPU with 61%. Then with the 220mm fans at the top and the 92mm fan on the cooler, we are seeing a good GPU performance of 22% better compared to no fan. However, it's interesting that we have 3 fans now running and it's only 22% better than without fans. And then the CPU is 68% better. So this configuration seems to work great for the CPU. It's creating a lot of good airflow for the CPU by sucking in a lot of fresh air from outside of the case. Then with this configuration, with having the 120mm at the back, creating a very common airflow by just exhausting on the back of the case, and having the 120mm on the top front, so blowing on top of the hard drive, in this case when it was installed in the 3.5mm optical bay, we see that the GPU is having a good performance, 31% better than without fans, and the CPU as well, 67%. So this looks like to be quite an acceptable and good configuration. Then, if we just remove the fan on the top, we see that actually the GPU is performing slightly worse with 28% compared to 31%. And the CPU is at 69%, so the CPU is actually performing better with a fan less. Again, you see how turbulence is really impacting negatively the cooling of your components. And if we move then with only 120mm at the back, we see that the GPU is working at 23% better compared to no fan. The CPU 67% better, and mind you that the fan on the cooler is turned off. So you see the actual impact that just one fan is doing on the case, and show you how important it is to have air moving through the case, even if it's just with one fan. Then the best configuration, and the one that I'm running in at the moment, is with 120mm fan at the top, the 92mm and the 120mm on the back exhausting, right? This is the best configuration for the GPU because we have only one fan at the top, creating a very clear airflow and blowing on the top of the GPU, and the GPU is performing 42% times better compared to no fans. And then we have the CPU is performing 69% better, right? And also the motherboard is in this configuration performing at best from a thermal point of view. So you see how not having all the fans you can put in the case, let's put all the fans, right, is not eventually the best situation because it's creating a lot of turbulence. I'm actually sorry not to run this fan anymore in the case. However, I like better to have the hard drives at the bottom of the case. It's a much more cleaner setup. And yeah, I'm losing the lighting, but I can eventually upgrade the 120mm fans with LED lighting fans. Also because I would like to upgrade to a PWM fan with a 4-pin connector to be able not to have to run the fans at full speed at all time, even though it's fairly silent, right? It's not as silent as I would like it to be, but it's fairly silent. So as you can see, I could have saved myself the money of buying this fan. And from a cooling point of view, with the fans just coming with the case, you can create already a very efficient airflow. So the lesson learned should be is not really straightforward. Sometimes the air cooling is not about putting as many fans as possible, as big as fan as possible. It's about creating the best airflow possible. So before jumping in and spend your money into a fan, unless you really want it for the cool factor, right, to have a huge fan in your case, But aside from the cool factor, you should actually see how much is cooling, not how much is cool. So in my case, you can see that having only the stock fans and the 92mm fans with a cooler is in the end the best configuration. I was surprised actually, but I was glad I took the time to record all this information and to make the effort to go through all the different configurations. I hope this is going to be useful to you as well if you are in a similar situation and you are unsure in which type of fans you should buy and how you should actually set up your airflow in your case. If you want more of these videos, please subscribe so you will get notified when a new video is popping up, and I hope you found this useful. Thank you.